Sahil and I had a discussion, and we felt that something that would be really powerful was actually looking at how we can improve people's understanding about nutrition. Now, what we realized was there does not exist a place where I, as an individual, can go and look at food and say, what's a better healthy alternative? From an expert's perspective, the dietitians, the nutritionists, where are all of their input to create something? And we found this would be something really powerful. And this was what led to us to create this concept of Nutrimprove with Zhao, who is a nutritionist, software hero, a multifactorial guy who can do amazing things. And Sahil's brain powers us through, and together we were able to create this concept. And I guess that's where we are now. So that's a little intro to what we're up to and what we've been doing. But what we wanted to do now, obviously with COVID-19 and the situation, how it's been, we really wanted to tailor that, to explain this and give some development on how things have been changed with COVID-19. And to start that process, I'm going to bring in Sahil.
Thanks, and hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And I wanted to start looking at the impact of COVID-19, not just on nutrition, but also on food supply chains, also on food purchasing power, also on consumer behaviours. And I want to start by looking at lockdown, at least here in the UK and also similar much in Europe, and the impacts of these before sort of broadening out. And we've seen a really interesting and wide set of change of behaviours, with many of which I think are set to persist. The first, really looking at supermarkets and how individuals impact supermarkets, and especially in urban areas where people would go to supermarkets once every 1 or 2 days, every 3 days, would operate something similar to a just-in-time system, not buy much in advance, buy frequently. All of a sudden, when people are scared about catching a virus, they're going to a supermarket once a week, once every 10 days, once every 2 weeks, or they're actually doing all of this online. We've seen 3 really major shifts in behavior. The first is more forward planning of meals. And once I think people see the benefits of this, it'll be something that's here to stay after the pandemic as well. So if I'm only thinking 2 days ahead and I'm thinking 2 meals I need to cook or 3 meals I need to cook, that's a lot more intuitive when it comes to here are some ingredients, here's what I can do. However, once we start to look at people being at home all the time, cooking for the next 2 weeks, when it comes to what people actually buy from the supermarket, they need to be a lot more concerted as to what am I actually going to do with these ingredients, how much am I going to use, how am I going to plan to use it all so I don't waste it. And we see a really important role that nutritionists and dietitians can play when it comes to educating people to different recipe ideas, different meal ideas, things that they might want to recreate that they used to take out, and crucially being able to do this in a much more health conscious and sustainable way. And the second change that we've seen is on fewer impulse purchases, where it's not that people aren't making the impulse purchases anymore, buying your chocolate bars just before you go to your checkout. But if you're doing that once every 2 weeks rather than once every 2 days, the impact of that on nutrition over time are really substantive. And the final impact we've seen when it comes to supermarket behaviours is more bulk buying and more panic buying, as we saw at the beginning with toilet roll, as we saw with people bulk buying flour and bulk buying pasta. We saw in the outset a shortage, which we may well see with secondary and possibly tertiary lockdowns. But after that, what we saw that was really interesting is people had a huge excess of these, and supermarkets then got these back in stock. And because the demand had dropped after getting to such a high peak, prices for these substantially shifted. So these behaviours, when it comes to subsequent lockdowns and what may happen, are really interesting. Next, shifting on to the economic impact. And the economic impact has been interesting too, with, for example, fewer luxury purchases. So people, for example, are shifting because the economic impacts have been seen countrywide and are set to persist. So where people might have bought luxury brands before, they're switching to cheaper brands, they're switching to supermarket-owned brands. And that's not only something that has been seen whilst people are furloughed, but it could be something that will be set to persist. And in this, we've seen a much greater impetus on value. And looking at it from a cognitive standpoint, it all really shifts back to expectations. So when it comes to the economic impact, when it comes to how we spend money, it's not just about what the impact has come to us now, but it's what do we expect about the future. And everything from the jobs forecasts through to the predictions on the economy, the upcoming recession and potential depression, through to what the impacts could be on prices, with food prices potentially set to spike globally, with everything from cascading food export bans, supply chain disruption, different shocks to the production side of things. Once you add all of these effects up, the effect on both food costs and how much people will have are really significant, and a shift towards buying cheaper is something that is likely set to stay for a while. And the next impact I'd like to look at of lockdown is mental, where looking at the other side of the coin, when there have been very few other comforts available, especially with major isolation impacts on mental health, especially for those who are over 70 or with mental health conditions who have been shielding, food has been seen as one of the few comforts that people can have when very few others are available. People haven't been able to go out and see their friends, they haven't been able to go out and see their family, they haven't been able to go out and play sport or see films or whatever else they may do. And food is one of those last real solaces that people have had to turn to. So, and in this comfort eating and talk about sort of pandemic or lockdown bodies and bellies that have been talked about in the media and social media, we think there's going to be a real shift after this when people are looking to get back healthy, and the role that nutrition and nutritionists can play here can be really mainstream, as well as crucially a much greater emphasis on health, which has been seen across the board with people being more scared about the pandemic, spending a lot more time internally thinking about their health, a lot more shift of this on the policy side, which I'll move to later. And people thinking a lot more about health is fantastic when it comes to marketing, when it comes to messaging, when it comes to what we can really talk to people about when it comes to how important nutrition is for their health, and actually getting them to listen in other times where they may not listen as naturally. And the next part I wanted to move on to was brand interaction. And the way that people have interacted with brands and the way that brands have worked has shifted. So everything was seen from the boycott Facebook movement in recent months, where a lot of large brands have boycotted Facebook, providing a vacuum in which small and medium food brands have been able to emerge and get new customers. And actually being able to take advantage of this when it comes to interacting with your clients is really important, through to the brands that have won during the pandemic and those that haven't done as well. So those which not only have a really incredible online presence, but know which different digital channels they should be using, know how they're able to tailor unique messaging to different audiences, and how they're able to do that across different demographics. And actually demographic changes with brands as well have shown that the brands that people are buying now are different to the brands that people were buying before. The products that people are buying now are different to the products that were buying before. Spend on cosmetics has dropped through the floor, but spend on food has seen as a proportion of income and a proportion of wealth is something that has not only stayed steady, but has increased during this time. So that's really valuable when it comes to actually understanding how people interact with food. And the next piece is looking at convenience, with two major impacts here again. So people are cooking more since they're at home all the time, so they actually have time to cook. And people don't have other options. As I said, they're not able to go out to restaurants. There are many fewer deliveries available. So, and the economic impact also means eating in is cheaper than eating out would have been. And because of this, I think we've seen a shift towards people being forced to cook for the first time in years. And a lot of people really taking to it, and a lot of people enjoying it, and people that didn't cook before are set to continue to cook afterwards. And as mentioned earlier, the opportunity to really use that with potential clients, especially their dietary needs and how they can fulfill them are changing, is a real new way in which we're able to add value in multiple ways. And I briefly wanted to start to look at supply chains and then nutrition. And I'll try and be succinct here with the impact on supply chains having been substantial and not necessarily that well understood. So we had flour shortages across the UK back in the early parts of the pandemic, and a lot of people thought, and the media portrayed, that this was down to panic buying, when it wasn't down to panic buying at all, but it came to a lot of food processing, for example, flour mills having been forced to close down because they weren't able to operate safely with social distancing. And the supply chain is not being able to work in this way. This processing closed down and impacts across the supply chain means that produce hasn't been able to get to shelf in the way that it would do otherwise. And we haven't seen that just in the UK. We've seen that with international supply chains as well, which is set to continue. For example, the Indian mango season that we've just seen has been a tiny fraction of the length than it would be otherwise. And the impact in the developing world has been substantial as well, with not just social distancing on farms and lockdowns, as well as in the UK farms, with only being able to get enough foreign workers now. And finally, capping, and maybe we'll get more into detail on the nutrition side of things, but we've seen vitamin D come to the forefront with a lack of sunlight exacerbating existing deficiencies, and micronutrient deficiencies, which maybe we'll get more into detail, really coming to the surface due to their impact on COVID-19 morbidity rates. Over to you, Mo. Thanks, everyone. Mo, I think you might be on mute.
I just gave the cure to coronavirus and you all missed it. That's a real shame. Can't say again now. I was just saying that is really interesting stuff that Sahil's presented. It's really, really good to have that because he's an economist by background, so he's got a really good worldview of how the impact is. I'm going to just bring up my slides again. Okay, cool. So I'm going to talk about COVID-19 and nutrition. So the main thing that has been purported, has been spoken about, has been discussed, has been the importance of can nutrition, the question has been, can nutrition help us in the fight against COVID-19? And a lot of the things that we already know have been good reminders at this time, and have been reminded again through the public health messaging, which is the importance of a balanced diet, the importance of looking at health conditions, long-term health conditions, and actually controlling those through looking at the risk factors, so high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease. So a lot of the discussions have been about how can we now look at the two things that we always talk about, two or three things, which are increasing our exercise, cutting down on risk factors like smoking, and really improving our diet. And it's been talked about a lot. Those three things will be really, really powerful because they will protect you. They'll help reverse or improve your health conditions or these chronic health conditions. But the question that's been on everyone's mind is there anything that can actually give us immunity to COVID-19? And this is the silver bullet, the solution to all of our problems. So what I've been looking at is whether or not there is something. Is there some nutrition that helps? Is there some sort of thing that we can do, we can take, we can eat? And there's been a lot of stuff on WhatsApp, a lot of fake news out there. But actually, there's been some really, really interesting research that has been demonstrated. So no, there's nothing, first of all, that can stop us from getting COVID-19. There's nothing that when we have COVID-19 is going to be an automatic cure. But there is a lot of research that demonstrates that there are 4 key things that we can do, we can take regularly that will actually help us to boost our immune system and help us potentially in the fight against COVID-19 if we get it. But certainly different types of upper respiratory tract infection, which can mimic it at this time. So the first one is vitamin C. And I think it's something that we all know about, something we discuss a lot. Way back when there were 2 sets of sailors around the world, one went this way, one went that way, and the ones that went this way went through the tropics, and for some reason those sailors didn't get so ill. And when they came back, a lot of research was looked into why, and what happened was they were passing through countries that had a lot of citrus fruits, oranges, lemons, etc., and they were eating these because obviously it was nice to have them on the way, and that was boosting their immune system. So the Cochrane.org have done a review on this, and they found that actually vitamin C reduces the duration of the common cold symptoms, particularly in periods of extreme physical stress. It can actually halve our risk of the common cold. Now, that also pertains to COVID-19. It can boost our immune system because obviously it's an aerosol respiratory illness. And what they found was 1,000 milligrams a day is what we need. So obviously that means that, yes, you can take supplements, which, a lot of us do. And I do a lot of medical work internationally, and vitamin C is one of my key things I take with me. I always have 1,000 milligrams soluble every day, but there are lots of foodstuffs that have them. So we know that the citrus fruits have them. We know that green and red peppers, black currants, berries. We know broccoli, sprouts. We know potatoes. All of these are really good sources of vitamin C. So this is the first thing. Vitamin C, really good research that shows that will boost your immune system. The next one is vitamin D, our favorite go-to. Bit of sunshine really boosts us up, and we always feel a bit more energized, don't we? And I think that's interestingly reflected in a recent meta-analysis. So when I'm talking about meta-analysis and randomized controlled trials, these are the big studies where they take in lots of other huge studies and look at them all and say, okay, all of these studies are showing this. Does this work? Does that make sense? And that means it lends a lot of authority because they're very valuable. And what they're showing is that 800 to 2,000 units a day reduces our risk of picking up an upper respiratory tract infection, especially if you're deficient. Now, most of us, if you're darker skinned, you find it hard to, your body's unable to take as much vitamin D in. Number two, we all live very sedentary lifestyles at the moment, and generally for the last sort of 5 to 10 years for sure. And as we move towards more in-house, in-office work, obviously we get less vitamin D exposure from the sun. So the key thing really is, again, looking at how we improve that from intake. So this is again kind of things you will all know, but a reminder: oily fish, egg yolks, liver. These are all kind of good sources. Of course, a lot of vegetarian people, vegans, would find it easy to get it through maybe fortified foods or cereals, and that's really powerful. So vitamin D is another one that we need to kind of consider within boosting our immune system. The other two, now zinc has been something that was really interesting for me to learn about, because I'd heard about it and I'd seen it through various different media, but there's a lot of fake news around it. As I said, there's a lot of information out there. This will help, and ginseng and this and that, and it's hard to discern what's right. And because there's not a lot of research initially, it was very difficult. But actually, again, Cochrane had done a review, and they found that once you get a cold, an upper respiratory tract infection, sore throat, cough, so fever, COVID symptoms, if you take zinc within 24 hours, it reduces your duration and the severity. So the advice, the recommendation has been everyone should be on 15 milligrams a day, but to increase to 50 to 75 for 3 or 5 days as soon as you start getting that little tickle in your throat, that little cough, that runny nose, fever symptoms. And again, zinc is again one of those foods that is very powerful in fish, so oysters, red meat, poultry, but also seafood. But there's also lots of whole grain sources and fortified cereal. These are really good sources of zinc. And we'll talk about how Nutrimprove also allows you to access different areas for all of these vitamins and minerals, because Zhao's done some really great work on helping us do that, because I think that's really powerful, especially with all this new research that we have. Okay, cool. So the final thing is probiotics. Now, probiotics are one of those things that everyone has debated for a long time. Are they useful or are they not useful? What is a probiotic? How do we get it? How much is enough? Now, what a probiotic does is it improves your white blood cells and these cells called your natural killer cells, which are not cells that would make you an assassin, but what they do is they're cells that work in our body that basically they go in through the body, and they're looking around for anything that's foreign, that's ill, that could cause illness, and they go and they attack it. It's like a attack on the front foot. The white cells are the ones that once you've got an infection, they'll say, right, I need to wake up, I need to go and boost and help fight my body's infection. But the natural killer cells are on the front foot. What happened was the research, the sort of meta-analysis, the randomized control trial that was done for this showed that when you extracted blood from subjects who had been on a probiotic regimen, so they'd been taking probiotics, the natural killer cells and the white blood cells, so the reactive and the proactive sides of our body, had an enhanced activity. Suddenly, our immune system was boosted, it was revved, it was ready to go. And that meant that people who took probiotic users had a significantly fewer amount of colds. Significantly normally means 3 or 4 times less than everyone else a year, which is, if you get 5 or 6 a year, most of us generally do, or maybe 6 or 7, you're halving that. It's a really, really powerful thing. So where can we get them? We can get them from sauerkraut. We can get them from kefir. We can get them from different types of plants. We can get them from fiber. And we can also get them from supplements online. And there are some good supplements that we can purchase as well. But of course, I think most people are now looking at how we can live that holistic lifestyle and how we can get the nutrition from food. So those are the main things for immunity. So can we become immune to COVID-19? Well, no, unfortunately not. We can't. But can we boost our immune system and put ourselves in a really good position? Yes, we can. And those are the 4 evidence-based ways to do it. Lovely. I think it's time to pass back to Sahil.
Thanks. Is my screen on? Perfect.
I just say, guys, if there's anything you want to add, or if there's any interesting things you want to say, feel free to just comment in the chat box as well, of course.
Thanks, everyone. And I guess now I'm really shifting to what does this all mean from a nutritionist and a dietitian standpoint in terms of better serving existing clients, how to get new clients, and at the same time, what are the different marketing messages? What are the different trends? How are these set to persist? And the first one is looking at home. And people are at home an awful lot more. People are at home 24/7 now. But people spending more time at home is not a trend that's going to go away. So when it comes to working from home, for example, large companies such as Twitter and Facebook have said that their employees will be able to work from home indefinitely after the pandemic. And a lot of workplaces are actually looking, at least not at full-time home working, but people working from home multiple days a week, which means that the way that we reach out to people, the way that people consume media is really shifting, with people spending a lot more time at home and people being out and about a lot less. So the first symptom of this is social media and social media use, which is on the up and is set to continue being on the up. So when it comes to using marketing channels, when it comes to how you interact with your clients, when it comes to how you get new clients, ensuring that you have a social media presence, that you are active across social media channels, that you are communicating with your clients via these channels is becoming more and more important, and they're becoming tools not only to engage but also to market when it comes to getting new clients. And it's also looking at what the marketing mix is across marketing channels. So where you may have spent money before on offline marketing, say via trade publications, etc., it's really drilling down on the advertising and marketing channels that work and that are set to continue to work. And it's not just on the social media side, but even going back to Google, even going back to PPC, even going back to the display ad network, and just really shifting from the offline world to the online world. And this is a shift that's really set to accelerate. And the final thing with people being at home more is they will cook more, they will experiment more, and more of the dietary advice that you're looking to give people will be less about what they should eat when they go out, but more about what they can do at home. So the more you're able to become an expert into different recipes or how people can experiment with different ingredients, the more value you can add as people are undergoing this shift from being out to being in. And the next is looking at health. And Mo touched upon this very eloquently, but there are a few things to look at. The first is sort of the Boris incident, where Boris Johnson was in incredibly ill health once he got COVID, and with significant comorbidity factors, such as being borderline obese. That was one of the aspects that really sprung the government review on obesity and the new obesity strategy that came out yesterday, which really, and having the spotlight of the impact of obesity, means that people are a lot more aware of the health implications of this, and people are likely to be much more willing to have their minds change and really shift their perception in how they value nutritional and diet advice when it comes to increasing their health. And the other side of the coin on that is nutrient deficiency, which has also been in the spotlight and is relevant for COVID-19, but also for a wide variety of other diseases. This opportunity to shift behavior at this particular point in time is huge. And by having the right messaging to a much more receptive audience is a time where you're really able to get more clients on board. And the final piece of this is looking at the focus on increased activity and exercise back into the front of mind, especially when people haven't been able to exercise for so long. And summarizing when it comes to marketing messages is the availability of food is really uncertain in upcoming months. So when it comes to not only UK supply chains, but international supply chains, as we don't know, sort of due to social distancing on farms, lockdowns, etc., how much food has actually been planted, what will happen to supply chains when it comes to harvesting, storing, processing, and transporting that food, and what subsequent lockdowns will be here in the UK. So actually knowing what food will be available when in upcoming months is uncertain, and being able to inform clients on this and how they're able to adjust what they eat in order to remain healthy despite the effects of this is another major opportunity for you to value add. And health and nutrition here are really more important than ever and under the spotlight, as I mentioned. And the pandemic has really helped nudge people towards what's important, namely their health. And the final way the piece is sort of like a segue and move and hand over to Zhao now, but is what we've been doing around this, what Nutrimprove as a product, how it works in terms of helping people find healthier recommendations, helping people find foods that are high in particular micro and macronutrients or low in particular micro and macronutrients, and how you're able to really use this tool with your clients to get huge amounts of value, not only in saving yourself time, but in adding value to your clients. So thank you for that. And Zhao, I'm now going to pass over to you.
Thank you, Sahil. Very good presentation, guys. Really, really full of good information. I hope everyone enjoys it. So Sahil and Mo already kind of explained more or less, kind of our objective. And we keep mentioning this web application. So this is basically what I'm going to show you now. It's just a quick 10-15 minutes demo. If I don't if I don't stop, guys, just kind of shut me down, because I like talking. So so basically the first thing you notice is the website. So it's nutrimprove.co.uk. So this is how you access it. You can also use .com. So both of them will be available. And then you get to the website. So you will need to log in before being able to access any of the functionalities. So let me just do that. So I'm just going to log in. And once I log in, we can see that we have a few options now available for us. Never mind the admin panel, but the other three options are available for everyone that registers on the web application. So just a quick demonstration of the kind of things that we can do the application. So let's start with the first one. So the first one is searching food. So we do use a big database that's actually an official database in the UK, full of kind of proper nutritional data. It's a co-feed, nothing related with COVID. So this is actually the composition of foods integrated data set from McCants and Widowson. So this is the kind of the data that we're using, but in this case we are using within our own internal database instead of a spreadsheet that you can download from the website. So we've converted that to a database, and that's what we're using now. So in here we can basically just search for food. So it will actually list all the foods that we have on the database. So this is just initial drop-down foods, but we can search, for example, for cereal, for example, and then kind of find like a few cereals there. And yeah, so basically you can just choose one of them. You can hit search, and then you'll have basically all the nutrition available for that specific food. So in this case, it's breakfast cereal, and these are the nutritional values per 100 grams of food. So it's quite interesting. We can also filter by category. So imagine that I want to fetch something like something for vegan, like if you are vegan or if you're a vegetarian, we can actually kind of filter things out in here. And then from here, we can just search for the foods, and that food will not be presented there. So only the filtered foods. The next bit is the nutrients. So this kind of correlates very nicely with what Mo was saying about, for example, vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc, for example. If someone wants to boost their immune system, with this tool, we can easily get the foods that are high in a specific nutrient. So for example, let's start, we can see all the kind of the options that we have available here. But in here, let's just, as an example, choose zinc, search. And then now we do have basically the top 100 foods. So these are the 100 foods that are the highest, they are high in zinc. So we can see oysters actually pretty good. So almost 60 milligrams. So basically it's like your daily amount if you want to improve your immune system. So by eating only 100 grams of oysters, that's a good option. I don't like oysters, so that's not good. That's not good for me. But then you have other options. You can see liver, you can see powders, soup, assorted flavors, Ovaltine. So all the foods that are high in zinc. As another example, we can see, for example, vitamin D. We all know vitamin D, you want some sunshine, you want to go outside, you want to go to the beach, walk in the park, expose your skin. But lacking that, you can actually get some from your food. So, and then you can see everything else in there, like that has also a bit of vitamin D, mostly fish and some eggs. Also, if you click here, and the same thing is the website, the web application is very consistent across the different screens. So you're going to be presented with data on the same format, so it's kind of easy to follow. So in here is basically the same thing. If you click on one of the foods, you can actually get the nutrients for those foods. So pretty useful. I do use it myself quite a lot, so it's quite interesting. You can also, this is a new functionality that we've just added, which is add a list. So we can actually add for example, the top foods with total vitamin D. So if I want to add, for example, the 25 top foods with vitamin D, I can just come here and I'll save the list. So I can just quickly come here to the lists, which is another one of the other functionalities. And we see that we now have the top foods with vitamin D in here that we just added, and we can see basically the same functionality. You can see the foods that were added because we didn't add like a specific quantity, just foods per 100 grams, so it's easy to check the nutritional values per 100 grams. So yeah, very consistent across the different pages. While we were on lists, so basically you can actually, instead of going from there, you can actually create a list from here. So you can have add new from there, and then in here you can type, for example, banana bread, homemade, select. You can actually choose the quantity. I just select 200 grams, and you add the food list. So you keep adding. You notice that we have now the nutritional information tab in here. So if we come here, we actually see, according to the amount that we've selected, it actually tells you all the amounts of the different nutrients. You can see that there are, I'm not sure if you were able to see, there is a kind of a little bluish color in some of these nutrients. I'm just going to reset this. So this is actually a dynamic nutritional card that you can actually change the nutrients in there to basically just to have the the 9 nutrients that you use the most with your clients, for example. So if I'm not interested in cholesterol, probably most of you are already aware of the cholesterol myth. So if I'm not interested in cholesterol and I'm interested, for example, in let's type zinc, for example, and then I change, and then I can actually see zinc. In every place in the web application where you have this type of nutritional card, you will see now zinc. This is saved to your user preferences, so each time you log into the application, the card will be as it was the last time you've actually used it. So yeah, so actually we can just give another example. If we select some apricots, we can see 662 calories. We're going to add 100 grams. And basically add to the list, and you can see that you have 2 ingredients. The total weight is actually 300. You can just choose another one just to make sure we put like a non-normal value. Let's just 122 grams, and you can see that we now have 400. So it does give you like an aggregation of all the nutrients that you are, all the ingredients that you are selecting. So you can say things like like a recipe, or if you have for example, the top foods for a diabetic, or you can just you just create the list that you think are relevant to basically whatever you're trying to help the person with. So we can save, and then we are ready to create another list. So if I go to my view lists, we do have now our new recipe in there with the amount of foods, total weight, and then the date that was created. So basically this is the list functional. And then we have like the core of the application. So the core of the application is basically recommendations. Okay, so as you've heard on the presentations from Mo and Sahil, our objective is to get the biggest database in the world if we can, but probably we're going to start in the UK, but the biggest database in terms of nutritional recommendations. So currently we don't really have much stuff. There is a lot of stuff about nutrients and what the foods have and recipes, but we don't have something that actually, if a client comes to me and if they have, for example, megaloblastic anemia, for example, or some other kind of other disease, we can just more or less kind of, if we determine that they have a lack of a nutrient, you need an application to help you with that. So in this case, you can go by nutrients, but it would be also interesting to kind of print out a list of recommendations that you could give to that client, and that this is where our application comes in. So not just with the nutrients and searching the foods and creating lists, but also what would you recommend instead of. So I'm just gonna view like just an example recommendation. So you can see that this is just examples. They're kind of probably adequate for most people. Of course, this is not to replace a nutritionist or a dietitian or a nutritional therapist, but it's a tool, So it's a tool to make our jobs a bit easier, if we are in front of a client. So all these recommendations, some of them might be useful for a client, some of them might not be relevant at all. So that's why the nutritionist comes in. So it will be able to filter those out. As an example, we have food, we have recommendation in here. So just clicking in one of those recommendations, you can actually see side by side. Again, it's consistent across the website, so same kind of information. And then in here, we can actually do a comparison of those foods. Of course, in here we are, for example, breakfast cereal. We are recommending the breakfast cereal instead of the eggs, and we can actually check. Okay, let's see if this is good. If you need carbohydrates, then probably it's not a good replacement. But we do know that most people have a very high carbohydrates diet, so maybe it is a good recommendation. But then when we get to calories, we see that okay, it's probably not that relevant unless the person wants to reduce the amount of calories to lose weight, for example. But if the person wants to maintain the weight, then this is probably you can always recommend 200 grams of eggs. So it's going to be like 3 eggs maybe, but yeah. But it's quite interesting to see, you can see side by side the recommendations. And then how do we view all the recommendations? So now we can see that we have a few more recommendations there. We are seeing these recommendations, but the recommendations will have a ranking at some point. So we can see the recommendation rating is 10. And those rankings are based on your input. So nutritionists that will come and help us. We already had a few nutritionists coming on board and helping us with kind of some advice. So you will come on board and you'll basically review the recommendations that all the other nutritionists have added. So for example, we have a review tab in here. So we go to the review tab. We see this is one of the recommendations from other nutritionists. So I wouldn't see mine in here because, of course, I would rate mine higher. So in here, basically, we can see that we have the same card. You can see that the zinc is there. You can also reset. You can do whatever you want to with the nutrients in there. You can also undo what you've done and so on and so forth. But basically, what you can do in here, you can go deeper. So every card will have a show more. So you can actually click show more. Same thing. You're going to have the card with all the nutrients, same thing on that one. And then you have the compare. So as we've seen before, we can do a comparison side by side with the nutrients that we have. So these are the most used nutrients. So we do have other ones available on the database, but we don't want to be kind of adding everything. So it kind of probably becomes a bit too much, but we will kind of, if you have some feedback on other nutrients that we might want to include in here, yeah, let us know. That we'll probably be able to include those if it's available on the data, of course. And then basically, if you're happy with this recommendation that the other user has added, you can approve or you can reject. So yeah, it's basically up to you. Or you can just skip the recommendation and go to the next one if you're not sure, and then you can just basically go on and so forth. So it will kind of add an approval rating. You go up or down depending on what the nutritionists or dietitians that are using the application. We call them contributors because you will be contributing to the application if you want to join the project. So basically, these are the recommendations. So to add recommendation, we have to. So these are the kind of most important bits in the application. One is the ad, and the other one is the bulk ad. So the bulk ad is to add foods basically on like big amounts. We don't have the kind of the very streamlined process in here that it kind of takes a bit longer, but it's a bit nicer. So let's start with the ad. So in here, let's just search for example, bread. Bread rolls, white crusty instead of bread. Okay, let's just have some Greek salad as an example. So we can just do search and we can see again side by side in here, and we can actually hover the nutrient and we can see on the other side. So it's easier for us to see what's going on. So in here, energy 262, 131. So of course it's lower calorie. You would have to increase the size of the salad for your client if you want to maintain the same calories. Although most people are actually looking to reduce the calories, but yeah. And then in here, same thing, you can compare. So you are again comparing, and then you can add the recommendation. So I'm going to add the recommendation. So you can see the salad, Greek one, healthy alternative to bread rolls. So we can click on add recommendation, and it's going to be adding recommendation. So currently we also have a points system. We still kind of unsure what we're going to do with this points system. So maybe we can gamify the application, but it's going to be interesting to see what's going to come in the future to the application. But currently, each time you add a recommendation, you'll get some points. So you can actually, maybe you can race with each other to see if you can get more points adding recommendations. So that recommendation then will be available on that big bucket of recommendations that the other users, the other contributors will be able to review it as well. So the higher the rating, the first that recommendation will be appear on your, so that it's going to be on top of the recommendations list when we use an API to fetch those recommendations. And it's also good. So if you contribute, for example, imagine that we have 10 nutritionists coming on board and to help us, one nutritionist will input 10 recommendations. If each one of those people input 10 recommendations, so it means that that individual will have access to 100 recommendations that they can use with their clients. So it's all about contributions to this platform. Without the contributions, probably it's still a very good application to use, but the kind of the central point would be the recommendations, which I do believe it's super powerful, and that's one of the reasons why I'm in this project. I think it is pretty good. And then we have the bulk ad. So basically, the bulk ad is more or less the same thing, but in here we can actually add without, if we already know what kind of recommendations we want to add. Actually, nope. So, and I probably found a bug, which is pretty good. I'm testing this on the go. So let's just try again. So we have, for example, potato. Actually, that's pretty good. I do like that. I just put like some random things in there, and in here we're gonna, every like banana split is going to be a good recommendation for. So this is just to finish when adding these recommendations. So this is an end-to-end ratio. So it means that each one of these recommendations will have, each one of these foods will have these healthier alternatives. So if I add the recommendation, so it will add 6 recommendations to the database. So let's add the recommendation. Of course, I will delete these later because these are awful. And then if I go to view all recommendations, we can see that those recommendations, they're ordered. So if I go to, they're created, we can see those now on the top. So basically, this is it. This is an application that the objective is to aid nutritionists on their day-to-day activities and hopefully provide a lot of value by increasing the number of recommendations that we provide. So all nutritionists being like a big group, a big association, inserting recommendations, and all of us can actually benefit from this. So I guess this is it. I'm not sure. I think probably we're going to move to some questions. If someone has any questions, maybe Sahil and Mo, you want to say something?
Yeah. Thanks. That was really, really good. Really enjoyed that, actually. Reminding myself of all the incredible stuff that we can do with this site. So, guys, I kind of wanted to talk about what about sort of the next steps and open up the floor a little bit. I think there were a couple of things that we wanted to sort of ask you about and answer questions. So I think in the chat function, feel free to put questions and we can run through them. And I'll start with Vanessa's question, which is this a paid app or free? So at the moment, it's only available for anyone who's a contributor as we build the database. So our plan has been that people who want to contribute and add to it. As I said at the beginning, I'm very, as a doctor, I'm really, really conscious that I want the experts involved. I want people who are actually doing this daily to be the ones who help to assist in creating it. So we get the best recommendations, the ones that patients will use, the ones that people will actually integrate. What does that mean? It means that if you do feel that, look, I'd like to be involved with this, there's a couple of things that we want to exchange for that. We want you to be involved. We want you to contribute, but we also want to make it worthwhile for you. So for I think a year or two, we're making the product completely free for access once it's done. So, we're going to add contributions. It'll be continuously free for your use at that point. Once we kind of got to a point where we say, yes, we've got enough to say we've got a really good database, even though we have quite a few anyway, we'll say, okay, from this point onwards, there's a year or two where it's completely free. So that will be something. And of course, we would never, ever change that without letting you know or asking you to opt in. So that'll be the first thing. The second thing is that we found that as a doctor and as a medic and within the medical field, there's a lot of things we have to do to keep up to date. So continuous professional development, demonstrating our improvement, and also as nutritionists and dietitians, we also want to demonstrate that we're with the cutting edge. We're using cutting edge tools, and we found that the fact that this has been endorsed by the NHS, we've had discussions with Public Health England, and then also the NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Scheme has taken us on. Has lent a lot of weight. So all of those things are things that we feel will benefit all of you to add. And when you join and do contribute, you can say that, look, I've been working with NHS, I'm working part of this team. So that gives you a lot of kudos. In terms of some of the other questions, so that's that concept. The general public we are looking at a few different models of how we're going to make it accessible. One of the things we felt was exactly as sort of healthcare providers, we really want the public to be really engaged with this, because the more they're using it, the better it's going to get. The more they are able to look at something and go, wow, I prefer to go with this because it's slightly healthier, it tastes very similar. That's really, really powerful. So for us, we will be looking at how we can make this as accessible to the public as possible, and also looking at the healthcare sector, how we can share it with them, and public health services generally. But our first port of call has been you guys, because we know that you are doing this day in, day out. We felt it was really powerful. So the website, Rose has asked, when will the website be available and how much is it? So cover the cost, but the website's already available. The next steps that we wanted all of you guys to sort of talk through at this stage was really telling you about what you need to do if you feel that you want to join. And the first thing is setting up an account, which I know Zhao has run through, but there was also a lot of information. I think everyone is also trying to find some vitamin C and vitamin D in their house and scrambling for that. So we're all there's been a lot of information come through. So we'll send that again. But if you want to go through that now, I think Zhao's happy to run through, signing up, so you can log in, and now you're on the website. You know what to do, and you can access all the information there as well, and contribute. And of course, your contributions, the more you make, the more we will be able to put you into that contributor category of someone who's been involved in this amazing project. And
I think it's worth adding that regarding the question about the public and the professionals, and one of the questions here is that nutritionists and dietitian, I think nowadays their part is very important, because like I said, some recommendations are adequate or are relevant to individual A but not to individual B. So we do need a dietitian and nutritionist to kind of understand the data a bit better, so that all the recommendations and the advice that the professional will provide are worth a bit more than just a person coming to the application. It's a nice tool to say, okay, I need foods high in zinc and things like that. But in terms of recommendations, I think it's important to filter those out, because some might not be relevant, and people could actually harm their health if they don't get like a nutritionist or someone that actually understands and can filter those out. So just a note on that.
Yeah, I think the really great thing about it is that there's so much information in these food choices.
Yeah.
Once you find on, you'll see, because I couldn't understand how much information there was until I looked on and said, wow, actually, it's not just the normal protein, carbohydrate, salt, sugar, refined sugar. It's got so much micronutrient information that when we're looking at really creating, and it can be, now a lot of you may work with general people within the public. Some of you work within the sphere of really high-end private people. Some of my private clients who I see who are sports people or who are involved with that element of things, they want to know and they need to know exactly what's going on in their body and what we're taking in. And it's very finely tuned. So that's one of the really strong elements of this database, which we found that we really wanted to share with you all, because we think that's really great.
Just to answer Rita, she put a question there. Can you put recommendations as diet type, vegan, vegetarian? So we did have this in the beginning. We were using a different database, but then we thought it kind of makes sense to use something more official and based in the UK. So this database currently doesn't have a specific diet as a vegan, vegetarian, or like any kind of other diet. So what we currently have are the filters. So you can more or less, if you go vegetarian, vegan is more or less, it's easy. But of course, if you go things like paleo or keto or, low fat and high fat, currently it's not available, but it's something that, we will be always taking some feedback and see what are the pros and cons, and we're probably going to evaluate that, and we can probably include it in the future. It is a very good thing to have in the application, and it's on my kind of the top additions to add in the future. But because of the limitations of the database, that we want to use something that's official with all the research that we have on foods, with all the values, actually with some research to back it up. Sometimes kind of like stamping it as a specific diet can actually go outside of the kind of what is the official and what the research says, because some people might find this item to be paleo and that item not to be paleo, or where does honey kind of be, like if it's honey from bees or from if it's manuka honey, is that kind of is the one from bees vegan, or it is very complicated. So it's something it's on the top of the list, because I think it would be very useful, because a lot of people are kind of following specific diets. But for now, we do have the filters, but something we have on our list of things to probably add in the future.
What we found is that diet's a little bit subjective, as you all know. People kind of have their own opinion of what certain foods are and where they fit in that. So what we did as the first stage is definitely to have a bigger proposition where you can look through. So someone may say, I use this type of food stuff, you can find that without having to put a label on it. But I do think that's a really nice point you've made, Rita. That's really powerful for us to look at as well, as João said. So I think that the other couple of things we were going to say was, obviously, if you found this useful, it'd be great to hear from you. Feel free to write something in the comments if you found it useful, if you had any questions or queries about anything that I've said, Sahil said, or João said. I think we'll definitely get an email to everyone for contributions and how they can get involved, and all that sort of thing. The other thing that's useful is, of course, if people have to have friends or colleagues who might find this useful, because I know a lot of us work in good big teams. We're more than happy. Our doors are open. We really want this to be something that can actually make a really impactful change. As we said, it's one of the three big things that are going to be facing the world. Frustratingly, armed conflict is very hard to tackle. smoking is almost impossible with the amount of lobbying, but hopefully with taxing going up, but it's very hard because it's probably the biggest addiction around. And of course, obesity. Now it's so multifactorial, but this would go a really, really strong way to making that difference. So if you do know people who'd be interested, feel free to share the information and get in touch with us.
So yeah, if you have any questions, we will be also available by email. So you can send, we are actually working on having a nutrimprove.com email. Currently, you can send to nutrimprove@gmail.com if you have any questions at all. You can also go to the website. You have the contact there, so nutrimprove.com. If you click on the About, you do see, let me just go to the About. You can see that we have the nutrimprove@gmail. So we will be changing this at some point to become nutrimprove.co.uk, but you can use this one for now. One of us, me, Mo, or Sahil, will be able to read and reply to you guys.
I think at this stage, we've run through most of the information we wanted to hand over and explain. And what we'll do, if it's okay with you all, is share some of the information we put in this presentation through to email, and then get up and send you guys some feedback forms and all that kind of stuff, so you can tell us if there's anything else you wanted, because I think what's really important is to make sure that we can keep providing you all with things that help with the continuous professional development, see what other information you're looking for, and other bits like that. Hope that sounds good to you all. Does that sound okay? Good. I can see some nodding. I feel like Rita's going to typing something.
Some heads. Yeah. I do hope you guys enjoyed our presentation. Sahil and Mo kind of provided really good information. We also have the application, which for me personally, of course, kind of I'm suspect, but I do find it to be extremely useful. And hopefully we're going to get more and more people to join us into to contribute, so that this can become a very, very cool tool for everyone to use. So yeah, thank you very much to everyone. Thanks to Sahil and Mo to cover those important aspects of COVID as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Really
Obrigado.
your time and insight.
Obrigado. Oh, nice one, man.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
One. So any questions, let us know. And yeah, take care, guys, and stay cool.